Hi, I'm Scott with BibleStudying.net. In a related study, we've been talking about the history of the early church, and we focused on changes in the way that church meetings took place, the way that church community and church life took place in the Apostolic Era of the church, that is the 1st and 2nd century, all of the 1st, most of the 2nd century, and also even up until the time of Constantine in the 300s. There were many things that were different about the church at that time than the church that has been ever since then. And so we mentioned quite a few of those changes in the church that took place. They were the house church community. They had a full communion meal. There were pastors taught with, and then there was some interaction with the men as they were teaching. They were not paid professional teachers. They were not trained in the art of rhetoric. They gave simple instruction to the church. Music was not featured at their church meetings. And again, they didn't tithe. They were communally, they shared with each other all that they had. And they didn't have a Christmas holiday each year. These are big features of Christian living that make a big components of who we are today as Christians and how we experience Christianity and what we know about Christianity as we meet together in our church buildings that are based upon Roman basilicas used for imperial purposes and as pagan temples, as we have pastors trained in the art of rhetoric and follow the model of the Greek sophists and orators who were paid professionals who used really artful speeches, and so who've incorporated music like they had in the pagan, in the choirs, in their plays, and in their temple activities. And we have, of course, the Christmas holiday that's basically been a Christianized version of the pagan holidays that they celebrated in the Roman world to their gods at that time. And so a lot of change, a lot of differences. Now we need to go to the New Testament to find out whether these changes are acceptable or not. But being aware of church history at least informs us that there are differences and helps prevent us from reading our own traditions into the Scripture and allow the Scripture to simply speak and tell us what it intends to say. The people we're talking about in the earliest era of the church were some of whom were the original audience or representative of the original audience of the scriptural text, and who had been taught by the apostles and then taught the church themselves. So in this part of the study, we're going to talk about changes in theology, the theology of the apostolic church, and the theology that has come in the 4th century and has continued in the church since then. That when there were changes that took place in theology along with the practice changes, the changes in the way church did things. And so what we're going to start off with is a basic overview of the ideological competitors of early Christianity. That is, the other religions that were out there in society, the other views of the world that were out there. And so early Christianity was had on the one side Judaism, and on the other side it had Judaism, I should say, non-Christian Judaism, those who weren't followers of the Messiah on the one hand, and then on the other hand it had all of the Greek and Roman religions, and including particularly Gnosticism and Neoplatonism. So let's talk about this. This is from Encyclopedia Britannica, the ante-nicene church period. That's the first 3 centuries of its existence, the existence of the Christian church. It had a distinctive system of beliefs vis-a-vis Judaism on the one hand and Gnosticism on the other. So the church was distinct from non-Messianic Judaism and also from Gnosticism on the other. But even after the church had become a mostly Gentile body, it continued to see itself as a Jewish movement, as a Jewish sect. And so we have to ask ourselves the question is, how did a bunch of 1st and 2nd century Gentiles from the Roman world end up with a Jewish way of thinking about God and about the world? And the answer to that, obviously, is that they got that teaching from the Jewish apostles who Jesus had sent out. They had gotten a Jewish way of looking at things from these men. And so, again, let's take a look at some information here. The ante-nicene period, the 1st century Christianity possessed a basic cohesion on the Pauline church movement. It had a Jewish character and a self-identification as a messianic movement. That's from Wikipedia. This is from Britannica. It says the Apostolic Fathers derives its name from this period from their contact with the apostles and the apostolic community, the late 1st and 2nd century. It says they were all, to a greater or lesser extent, influenced by the profoundly Jewish atmosphere that pervaded Christian practice and thinking at this time, at this stage. The real key to the theology of the Apostolic Fathers is its Jewish Christian through and through, expressing itself in categories derived from latter-day Judaism and apocalyptic literature. So that is the early church, and so at the dawn of the 3rd century, however, the church began to consider Greek ways of doing things and Greek ways of thinking. This is from Britannica. It says of the ante-nicene period. During the first 3 centuries of its existence, the Christian church had to emerge from its Jewish environment. It was obviously very Jewish in the first centuries. And then it had to come to terms with the predominantly Hellenistic or Greek culture that surrounded it. And so this Greek world that surrounded the church was dominated by particular ideologies. And we're going to talk about the ideologies or religions that were out there in the Greek world that early Christianity had to compete with, and that it eventually began to consider incorporating. But that through the first centuries, it fought against and resisted. So we'll continue to talk about these ideological competitors to early Christianity in the next segment of our study.